Every year, some 400,000 people, men and women from every corner of the Indonesian archipelago, leave their homes to work overseas. They travel far and wide, from Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia to countries in the Middle East. They're all looking for a better life, a way to make more money for their families back home in Indonesia. Many stay for just a year, but some stay much longer. When they return, they bring with them ringgit, dollars, and other foreign currency. Statistics show that foreign workers bring back a total of about 50 trillion rupiah each year. That's $5 billion. But some of these workers are not so lucky. They had hoped to improve their lives, but instead they came back injured and often humiliated by their employers. Malaysia is the second most popular destination among Indonesian migrant workers after the Middle East. Similar language and close proximity make it a popular choice. More than 1.5 million people came from Java, Sumatra, Lombok, and many other islands in Indonesia to work in factories, on construction sites, plantations, and as waiters and housemaids. Women migrants usually work as servants in Malaysian homes. Tarwiyati is one of the 300,000 foreign domestic workers registered with the Malaysian government. Since 2003, she worked for a family that lived in an apartment in the Subang Jaya area. Her employer, Yudi, did not go through an agency to find her.
Okay, TAR is I recruit them myself through recommendation. What I need them through recommendation. So I asked her to send passport, and I will also talk to her through phone where to go for medical check, because the basic things I need here is a passport and the medical certificate, as well as her birth certificate, that everybody will have it.
Yudi found out about TAR from her mother, who worked in a laundry. Her daughter had been detained because she did not have a passport or work permit.
Saya dulu kerja dari Singapura kan. Singapura langsung.
I used to work in Singapore. From Singapore, I didn't go back to Indonesia. I went to Malaysia. When I got here, my passport expired, so I couldn't return home. Some of my friends are in the same situation as me, so we stuck together. I've been in jail for a week, and I'm losing my weight already. After that, Yudi told me and my mother to return to Indonesia, but we had to pay. The money was hard to get. We have to pay the police thousands. I have no money.
After TAR got her passport, Yudi personally took care of all the documents that TAR needed to work in Malaysia. She also trained her as a housekeeper. Yudi treated TAR as a member of his own family. She was allowed to really make herself feel at home. Yudi even gave her a cell phone so she could call her child in her village back home in East Java.
She's a human, right, like us. Right. What we use daily, she also may need the same thing. Right. And if we are taking her, right, whatever that the facilities she use is also the basic things that we need. So why don't we just give her what we are also using the same thing?
Yudi also let TAR work out her daily schedule with Jacqueline, Yudi's other maid who came from the Philippines. Tarwiyati is one of the luckier ones. Not all foreign workers get treated well. Muhammad Iqbal, a psychology counselor at the Indonesian Embassy shelter in Kuala Lumpur, is researching the issue. He found that from all the types of work that Indonesian migrants do, being a domestic worker is often the toughest job of all.
There are many Indonesian migrant workers, especially domestic workers, where we find with many cases. We know here there are factory workers, construction workers, field hands, but domestic workers is a profession with the most of the problems. They include being physically or emotionally abused by an employer.
One of the major problems is the fact that many of these workers are given little, if no, time off. They often work 7 days a week, from 4 in the morning to 10 at night. Yani is one example. Since her employer picked her up at Kuala Lumpur Airport, she worked non-stop for an entire year. She started her day cleaning the house, washing clothes, the family car, cooking, babysitting, and even bathing her employer's pets.
I wake up at 4 o'clock, sweep the floor, clean the floor, sweep the dust. I just clean everything, sir. There's a child, I give her a bath too.
Iya, jadi repot beli kini jaluk raya dilap, kini jaluk kawe susu, kini jaluk cewok. Jadi angel ya.
It's not surprising if Yani could only stand it for a year. When she got hepatitis, her employer returned her to her agent.
Saya tuh lagi sakit, pernah keberatan sekali ya di porsi tenaganya kan mas.
I was sick, perhaps because I've been forced to work too hard. So I was returned by my employer. She returned me home, so I returned to agent. My agent bring me to Malaysian port.
Tempe tekang, pelabuhan Malaysia.
Her agent did not take Yani to the doctor and also deducted 2 months of her salary to pay for her ferry ticket back to Indonesia. Sick and alone, Yani was stranded for 2 days at Batam Harbor, waiting for another ferry boat that would take her closer to home. She arrived in Indramayu with only 7,500 rupiahs in her pocket, less than $1, just enough for a plate of rice.
They didn't pay me for 2 months. I pay with my own money, not from the employer. I only have 7,500 rupiahs.
Yani went to a local health clinic and was eventually cured. Now, to help her husband, an ice seller, Yani is again working as a housemaid, but this time in her own town. Her salary is only 1/5 of what she made in Malaysia, but for Yani it's enough. She doesn't want to work anywhere else ever again.
It's traumatic, sir. It was enough for me. It's very good if we succeed. Yet, this is how we have to accept. It makes me traumatic.
There are laws in place to try to protect these workers from unscrupulous agents. The Malaysian government applies a very tight selection and qualification procedure, which includes having 100,000 ringgit or some $30,000 in insurance to manage the repatriation of any worker.
Di bawah Kementerian Sumber Malaysia, iaitu melalui Jabatan Tenaga Kerja, kita kuatkuasakan.
Under the Ministry of Human Resource, through Manpower Department, we authorize National Agency Act, which is authorized by any national private agency to register before they recruit local or foreign workers. And up to now, there are 985 agencies registered in Manpower Department. And I understand from those numbers, only 289 were licensed by Malaysian immigration to recruit foreign workers, including from Indonesia.
Jabatan Immigration Malaysia untuk membuat pengambilan pembantu rumah asing, termasuk daripada Indonesia.
But this regulation does not always ensure that an agency will do what it's supposed to.
I don't use agency. To use an agency, right, their recommendation, for me, I feel very insecure. Okay, what they want maybe is they want to make money, right, and they may not thoroughly interview or select the right mate for us. Okay, they may put the wrong mates, the wrong mates to a wrong employer, right, and there will be problems.
Some agents only provide basic skills and delivery, but do not offer any follow-up or find out how these workers are doing.
I think the cooperation needs to be strengthened and clear, especially Malaysian agency. Perhaps Indonesian Employment Agency only send them, give them training and send them. But when they arrive here, we don't know what will happen to them.
The agents also play another role. They must look after the interests of the employers who hire these workers.
Kalau misal ada masalah, kita harus lihat daripada dua pihak.
If there's a problem, we have to see things from both sides. We can only listen from the worker. We have to listen from the employer side and employee side before we decide to finish it.
Untuk menyelesaikan masalah itu.
This often puts even good agents in a difficult position. When there is a dispute, they have to figure out what the best course of action is.
Kalau kita harus menempuh jalur hukum, kita akan tempuh. Kalau memang itu diperlukan, tapi kalau kita
If we have to resolve the issues through the court system, we will. But first, we try to resolve it informally.
Tapi kalau memang di situ udah nggak bisa untuk secara keluargaan, kita harus menempuh jalur hukum untuk menyelesaikan masalah itu.
The problem is that migrant workers seldom understand the law, and sometimes they don't fully understand the content of their own employment agreement and don't complain when their agent or employers keep their passport and work permit.
Mereka harus meminta hak mereka untuk melihat.
They have to demand their rights to see their work permit, to make sure who is their employer and where are they have to work. This didn't only happen to Indonesian workers, but also to people from India, for example. Most of them weren't allowed to keep their passport or work permits, and sometimes that makes it difficult to prove who their employers really are.
Siapakah majikan mereka sebenarnya sekiranya berlakunya sesuatu masalah.
Holding an employee's passport and work permit is against the law, but for some agents it's a way to exploit these workers. They start by moving worker from one employer to another, then they also intimidate them and force them to work outside their contracts.
If they were hired to work with employer A, they have to work with employer A and cannot work with employer B or work in other places even if their employer told them to. If this happens, it's not only the agent that can be tried in court, but the same thing can happen to the employer.
Majikan juga boleh didakwa di mahkamah.
Tenaga Nita is a community institution that often handles migrant labor affairs. They say there are ways for workers to protect themselves.
The most important thing that a domestic worker should be prepared before she leave the country, in my opinion, is that they should know the agencies. Both the agencies, back in Indonesia as well as in Malaysia, they must have their contact numbers and their addresses, so that in terms of emergency, they know where they can go and call and ask for assistance in terms of emergency.
Sometimes this information is provided by the Association of Employment Agencies, the PJTKI. Halima is a manager from PJTKI. She says she always reminds prospective workers about the risks.
I always warn my workers who want to go to Malaysia. I'll tell them if they run away, they will be considered illegal. If they get caught by the police, they will jail you first before trying to get you home. If you're illegal, you lose your insurance and no one will take care of you if you're sick. So I always tell them not to run away.
Karena apa-apa tidak tercover. Kamu meninggal, nggak ada yang ngurus, kamu sakit, kamu nggak ada yang ngurus. Jadi saya selalu menerangkan sama mereka, kamu jangan lari.
To try to protect her workers, Halima decided to work with her partner agent abroad.
Saya kalau punya agen yang nggak mau handle case,
if there is an agency who doesn't want to handle a case, I don't want to cooperate with them. So if we want to work together, we have to look at how much cooperation we can accept. If an employee has a problem, we will contact her immediately, ask her what's wrong. If she doesn't want to tell me, I get angry. I'll tell her that she can't be like that. It's written in the agreement. The agreement says we have to cooperate.
Itu semua dalam perjanjian. Perjanjian waktu kerjasama.
But PJTKI managers focus more on preparing workers for their new jobs overseas. The workers often stay at training centers to learn basic household procedures and to take language classes. Sometimes they're there for weeks before leaving for their new jobs. But the training and recruitment process does not come cheap.
It's very expensive to send them abroad. Honestly, it really is. We pay everything up front. It's only after they get their help.
The recruitment process begins in the villages. E-en sponsors workers from Indramayu in West Java. For the past 5 years, she's recruited around 3,000 migrant workers that are now employed throughout much of Asia and the Middle East. All the workers' contact information and photographs are kept in the office. But whenever there's a problem, Mimi can only hand it off to the PJTKI, which also has little power to resolve the issue.
Well, sometimes the girls rang me. I have trouble with my salary, they said. Things like this sometimes happen in Saudi Arabia. Usually, the workers in Asia get their money directly, but in the Middle East, the employer kept the salary for 3 months or 4 months. And if they got troubles, they usually will tell me, and I will tell the PJTKI, so the PJTKI will pay them there.
Haji Dadang works to try to make sure these workers from Indramayu are protected. Besides supervising, Dadang also asks her worker candidates to remember a family or friend's phone number, just in case there's an emergency. It's small things like this that can really help.
Well, that's why we have some guidebooks. It's a must for our migrant workers to remember my home phone number and cell phone number.
Ya, masuk, ada buku tuh, buka aja, buka. Duduk dulu deh. Duduk dulu. Tunggu sebentar ya.
But the problem is that even with all this preparation, when a worker needs help, all Dadang can do is inform PJTKI. Migrant workers don't realize that their sponsors in the village can't do much to help them. Thinking about the agents or their prospective employees is the last thing all these young workers can think of. All they can really think about is making a good salary.
Our passport was usually held by our employer. We usually not keep it. As long as it's safe, it's okay.
Do you need a copy of your passport?
Well, no. Our passport is already there. Why we should copy them anyway?
What will you do if you're not paid?
19 months? I let it go. Just let it go.
Kelasin aja. Ya dikelasin aja.
Of course, not all prospective workers are as naive as Pucci and Dita. Ratmini, for example, is going to Taiwan for the second time. Her former boss asked her to come back to work as a housemaid. They even provided her with a ticket.
No, I depend on my employer. If they're nice, they'll buy us ticket. If they're mean, we buy it ourselves.
Even though her boss is very nice, Ratmini says she always takes precautions before leaving home.
Manpower department, then church, mosque, they usually helped us. So every time I hear the radio, I always note for the emergency numbers. I'm just worried about my employer. We don't know someone's heart, so we better prepare for the worst.
Jadi aku udah punya persiapan gitu.